I need to say something brave but controversial. I don't think that Gil Webber was that bad. Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. So yes, today we are going to be talking about Gen 1 Monster High's Gil Webber, specifically within the context of his relationship with Laguna. This is like a hot topic. I feel like this is a hot debate, I guess you could say, with G1 Monster High fans. Or maybe debate is kind of the wrong word, because I do feel like most people, or at least the people who are the loudest on the corners of the internet that I frequent, really don't like Gil Webber as a boyfriend for Laguna, and like by extension kind of don't think that he is a good person in like general. And I have to say, now that I've watched the Gen 1 Monster High media, I kind of disagree. Like, I don't think he was perfect, because nobody's perfect, but I don't think he was as bad as people make him out to be. And now I'm making a video on why that is. Like, I'm going full video essay. Here's why I don't think that Gil is that bad. This is like not the kind of video that I normally do, but it is something that I'm extremely interested in. I got like so focused in on researching for this video and like coming up with my points and finding sources and everything. So this is really fun for me. If this is fun for you and there's any other videos like of this nature that you'd like for me to do, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. But I hope that you're able to enjoy. If you do, if you could like and subscribe and all of that fun stuff, that would be very helpful for me. But that's more than enough self-promo. We have to get to the point at hand, which is defending Gil today, okay? Obviously, like, I am a little bit biased because I'm coming at you from the standpoint of I would like to defend him, but I still think that I'm going to make some good points. So let's go ahead and dive on in, pun not intended, but dive on into why I don't think Gil Webber is as bad as most people say that he is. Now, obviously, before I can get into defending Gil Webber, I have to tell you kind of the charges leveled against him. I'm not going to get super, super in-depth with this just because I'm assuming that if you clicked on this video, you kind of know what's going on. But just in case you don't, the basics of it are that within the canon of Gen 1 Monster High, I almost said Laguna. Gil is a freshwater monster, and then Laguna is a sea monster, and there's a lot of bigotry towards the sea monsters on the part of freshwater monsters. They tend to believe that sea monsters are honestly just less in every way, less good, less capable, less intelligent, all of those things. So it's like very clearly a racial issue here, right? And Laguna and Gil are in a relationship, but Gil's parents do not like Laguna because they're racist against her. They hold a lot of bigotry towards her and anyone else who might be a sea monster. And so that's kind of a struggle within their relationship. And the main argument, I guess, is that Gil doesn't stand up for Laguna enough. You know, like his parents are inherently racist towards her kind of monster, and Gil just like doesn't do enough. And I'm here today to try to like refute that claim just a little bit. Again, I need to be so clear. He is not perfect. No one is perfect. No character is necessarily perfect. So like he's not perfect. I'm not going to say that he does the exact right thing in every single instance, but I just don't think that he's as bad as people make him out to be. So like, let me get through the video before you like judge me on my opinions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But to get into this, I have like a whole carefully crafted list. What I did was, because I've seen all the Gen 1 media, but like a lot of it was not super and honestly didn't stick in my mind because my brain was just like, yep, you don't need that. So a lot of it I have forgotten. So to make sure that I was being wholly accurate, I went to the Monster High Wiki. Huge shout out to the people running those pages because it was insanely helpful. And I like went through all of the media, all of the like interactions that Gil has to make sure that I know exactly what I'm talking about, because this is like an important topic. I don't want to just be like talking willy-nilly. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting with the webisodes. I feel like in Gen 1, the canon is iffy at best of times. Like, it's just kind of a weird and not necessarily super rigid world, if that makes sense. So we're going to go through the webisodes and then the movies kind of separately, just so you can get a feel for how Gil is portrayed in those two different types of media. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting with the webisodes. I am actually pulling quotes directly from the Monster High Wiki, so all of these quotes are pulled like right from Gil's page. And I just thought that this would be the best way because they're very succinct. They like say, hey, this is the interaction, and then I can talk about my thoughts on it. So first up, first occurrence between like Gil and Laguna. Quote, Gil notices Laguna Blue's silent crush on him, and when she goes into another daydream, he takes her clockulus book lying open in front of her. It contains a drawing of the two of them, to which Gil adds an invitation to meet at the fountain. After class, he gives the book back to her. This one is like the start of their relationship within the webisodes. Maybe this is canon. Again, like the movies and the webisodes kind of like blur the line of like what is precise in the canon sometimes. But I just wanted to highlight this one, A, because I didn't want to miss anything so that people couldn't be like, hey, you forgot about this one. I didn't forget. But also, I do think that this is cute to note that while Laguna is the one who has a crush on him, he takes note of this and he's the one to really make the first move. He's the one to go, hey, you want to meet up and like talk and, you know, get to know each other a little bit. Like he's initiating this interaction, which inherently shows that he is at least not extremely overt in racism. Now, obviously, that is not like the end all be all. Just because you will talk to someone who is a different race does not mean that you are not racist. We will get into that, I promise. We're building the blocks, okay? We're starting off here. The next entrance in the wiki was, quote, Gil partners up with Laguna to take care of an egg for a whole week as an assignment for Mr. Hackington's class. Hackington, however, suggests they switch partners because, quote, everyone knows that sea monsters are bad parents, end quote. Angered, Gil and Laguna vow to be the best caretakers of the class. A week later, their egg is the only one that hatches. First of all, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Hackington is not even a freshwater monster. Like, I don't think he's a water monster at all, which goes to show that the sea monster bigotry is, like, even beyond the water monster world. Like, apparently this is just a widespread thing. But the key thing here is that Gil does not agree with Mr. Hackington. He's not like, yeah, it really sucks that my girlfriend and my partner, I don't actually know if they're together at this point, but it really sucks that my assignment partner is a sea monster because obviously she can't take care of anything. He does not do that. He's upset for her. He's upset about this bias, and he sets out to partner with her specifically to prove Mr. Hackington wrong. He doesn't say, okay, I'm going to take care of this egg because you can't be trusted. He's like, no, let's do this together. He's wrong. I know that sea monsters are capable of being parents and like caring for other human beings. They're capable of caring for other monsters. Let's prove him wrong together, which I feel like is another important thing to just highlight. Next up, quote, Gil reluctantly avoids Laguna during the spirit rally because of the tensions between their respective monster types. Laguna invites Gil for another game of water polo, but he dejectedly refuses. Pushed for a reason, he admits there's a problem and that telling her would hurt her feelings. This is one of those instances where I can say, yeah, this is not the best thing that Gil has ever done. He should tell her straight up what the issue is. Like, they should have open communication there. He is experiencing some pressure, as we will find out in a second, from his parents. Like, there is stuff going on that is not good. So this is what I mean when I say that I know Gil is not perfect. I know he doesn't do the ideal thing in every single situation. I just need y'all to bear with me. Like, I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, which is why I still included examples like this, because I'm not trying to point out that like Gil was perfect every time ever. So I have to include the bad stuff too, and this is just an example of that. Following that, kind of like right after, quote, Gil confesses to Laguna that his parents object to him hanging out with a saltwater monster and that he doesn't know if he should go against their wish. He leaves Laguna with tears in her eyes. Gil tries to talk to Laguna, but she refuses to listen if he's not willing to stand up for his own beliefs. Again, this is obviously not like the greatest situation. He did tell her what was going on, which is good, but he still did hurt her because he didn't immediately stand up for her. He didn't immediately go against his parents and say, hey, no, your beliefs are wrong. Laguna is great. And like, I don't want to hurt her and I don't want to like treat her differently because you guys have biases. Absolutely, he could have handled this better. So, you know, that is a tally against Gil in that situation. Continuing on kind of with this situation, quote, Deuce talks with Gil about his lie to Laguna that his parents are now okay with them dating. Gil and Laguna win a swimming contest, at the end of which Torelei takes a picture of them holding hands for the fear book. A spread of just the two of them in the fear book prompts Gil to confess to Laguna that he lied about his parents being okay with them dating. Gil tries to placate her by coming up with ways he can keep the fear book away from his parents, which she rejects as an acceptable solution. Gil chooses to be loyal to Laguna. He calls his parents to tell them of the amazing seawater girl he has met at Monster High, which they don't respond well to. For the time being, Gil is content that he can stop lying and has made Laguna happy. So I do want to say here, I think this is like a good time to point this out. I am trying to defend Gil in a certain way here. That is not at all to say that Laguna is wrong in her feelings or wrong to be upset about the beliefs that Gil's parents hold. Laguna is not at all the enemy here. She is absolutely a victim of like this racism within the monster community. So please do not get me wrong. I 100% think that Laguna is in the right. I just also think that Gil is not completely in the wrong. So with this, she is absolutely allowed and frankly should reject the idea of lying to his parents as an acceptable solution. I completely understand why she did that. I think she was right to do that. I think it's important to highlight here that even though Gil has clearly been afraid, he would rather lie to his parents than like tell her what's going on with Laguna if that's possible. When she says that that's not something she's willing to do, he stands up to his parents and he decides that his relationship with Laguna is important enough for him to go ahead and stand up to them and stand up to their beliefs. They don't react well, but he is happy that he's done this and he's happy that he is with her. So like, did he get to this point perfectly? No. But in the end, I do think that he made the right and moral decision. And so I feel like that does count to a certain degree. Once again, we're getting like through the evidence, and then at the end, I'll kind of wrap everything up and explain everything. So the next little excerpt is another long one. Bear with me. Gil is preparing for a date with Laguna, and he did not expect his parents to try to talk him out of it last minute. Exasperated to have this talk again, Gil rejects their claims that sea monsters are ill-mannered and selfish. He recalls when he and Laguna took care of an egg, and the time Laguna helped frogs escape death for dissection to put strength behind his words. Next, Gil gets to the accusation that Laguna can't be trusted on account of her species. Declaring Laguna the best friend anyone could ever ask for, he recounts incidents with Frankie and Slow-Mo in which Laguna went out of her way to comfort or help them. Gil's parents are still not convinced, but Gil can't be bothered. He tells them he won't stop seeing Laguna or cancel the date before leaving his room angrily. To his parents' relief, he comes back a moment later, but to their disappointment, only to get the bouquet for Laguna he had forgotten. Promising to be back early, Gil leaves his parents to wallow in their disapproval alone. So again, this is a really, really good example of him actively fighting for his girlfriend, and at this point we see him standing up much more strongly. Like, now that he's kind of done that initial, hey, I think you guys are wrong, he's coming in and he's refuting them point for point. They're saying she's selfish. He's saying, no, she's not because this. They're saying she's incapable. He's saying, absolutely not. This is what she's done. This is what I've seen her do. So I think this is really nice and shows like a little bit of growth with Gil, that not only is he saying, hey, you're wrong, he's standing up to them actively, but he is like disproving them again, point by point, saying, no, these are all the wonderful things about Laguna that you just refuse to see because you're racist. And I think that that is a really wonderful thing for him to be doing. The next time there's like an interaction with Gil and Laguna, I don't want to like explain the whole scenario because it is extremely long and it's not as relevant. I'm only pointing it out again because I feel like if I don't mention that this is a thing, people are going to bring it up and be like, oh, you forgot this one or you intentionally excluded it to make Gil seem better. But I know it's here. So there was a whole plot line about all of the male characters lying to their respective significant others, who are all girls in Gen 1, because they're trying to have a like nerdy board game night and they don't want the girls to know. So Gil is involved. He does lie to Laguna about this, but he's not the only one. Deuce also lies. Claude also lies. I don't remember if there's anyone else, but like, he's not alone. He's not the only one who's doing this. It is still a lie, which like me personally, I just don't like that in general. But some people might see that as kind of more of a white lie, like it's harmless. He just wanted to hang with his buddies and was like a little bit embarrassed. And the most important thing is that it had absolutely nothing to do with Laguna's race. Like, this was not just him engaging in this lie, and it had nothing to do with his like parents' beliefs or just beliefs against sea monsters in general. So I'm highlighting it so that people know that I'm aware of it, but I just really don't think it adds anything to this conversation. Next up, again, not quotes because it's just like a whole situation here. But there is a point where Lorna McNessie is introduced, and she is a freshwater monster within the canon of G1 Monster High. She starts getting very, very close with Gil, and Laguna is worried that he might want to leave her for a freshwater monster because his parents would obviously be much more accepting of that sort of relationship. Quote, they confront Gil and he tells them what's really going on. Lorna has a boyfriend she talks to online named Finn, who is a saltwater merman, and Gil has been helping her find a way to tell her father about their relationship since he knows all about the problems she faces from his time with Laguna. So I think this is another really nice moment with Gil's character, because not only was the furthest thing on his mind leaving Laguna for an quote-unquote easier relationship, or one that his parents would be more approving of so he'd be fighting with them less, but he's actively trying to help someone who's in his same position. He's sitting there trying to be a friend to Lorna, to say, hey, I know that our families are wrong about sea monsters. I'm sure that your boyfriend is a great person, and here are, like, you know, ways that I have figured out how to stand up and like how to try to support them and all of that jazz. I think this is really, really cute. And I also think that there is a phenomenon in like real world racism where people will claim that they're not racist because they know a person. I should say, actually, really quick, to my mom, if you're watching this video, maybe don't, because we're gonna get into some stuff that like you just might not want to deal with. But anyway, perfect example is my dad. You know, he definitely was not the most racist person that I've ever met, but he was not the least racist person that I ever met. And frequently he would say, "Oh, well, I had a black best friend in high school, so I'm not racist." But the fact is, those two things can be true. He did have a black best friend in high school. My dad was white. I'm very, very white, but also he was racist. Like that's just how it is. And so I think that this example with Gil and Lorna is especially nice because it shows that his attitude is not, oh, well, yeah, sea monsters are kind of shit, but Laguna's the exception. I feel like him helping Lorna with her relationship with Finn shows that he inherently doesn't believe the same things as his parents. It's not saying Laguna's the only good seawater monster. He's perfectly willing to accept that Finn is also a wonderful seawater monster. And so I think this is like a really, really important point because I think it absolutely showcases that Gil does not harbor the same overarching sentiment as his parents. And it's not like he's making an exception for his hot girlfriend or something awful like that. I feel like this shows that he genuinely doesn't think and feel the same way his parents do. And that is the end of the Gil and Laguna situation within the webisodes, at least in context of like anything that's even remotely relevant. They are both present in webisodes past that, but like not in the relationship sense. Like there was nothing else on the wiki that I felt like even remotely needed to be involved. So now we get to jump into the movies, and we are going in order, starting off with Skull Shores. So within Skull Shores, Gil is reluctant to go visit Laguna's family at the Great Scarier Reef because he's never met them before. And from what I remember, and also from what I reread on the wiki to like refresh my knowledge, his fear is that they are going to think badly of him. Essentially, Gil knows that his parents are racist towards Laguna's monster type, and he is worried that her parents are going to kind of be the inverse and they might be racist towards his monster type, or they might think badly of him because they know that freshwater monsters tend to be racist towards seawater monsters. And he's worried about that whole situation, specifically because he wants them to like him, and he's like worried that they're going to have some biases against him. Just in the interest of like trying to be as unbiased as possible, I will say that there's absolutely a possibility that because he grew up with racist freshwater monster parents, it's possible that some of his trepidation about meeting Laguna's family does come from like racial stereotypes. I'm wanting to say that it is primarily like his fear about how they'll like receive him, but some of that fear could be because of deep-seated like internalized racism towards them, which we will get to in a little bit. I'm saying that because again, I want to try to be as unbiased as possible, and it absolutely is a possibility. But I guess like what I want to touch on here and what we're going to be coming back to a lot like at the ending is that when you grow up in a situation with racist parents who are constantly teaching you racist values, I do think it is almost impossible to escape that situation without some sort of internalized racism, and that is absolutely no excuse for behavior. That is 100% something that you should work to undo, because like just because you can't help it doesn't mean that you can't try to fix it, right? But this is where I think we need to highlight the first instance of Gil is a teenager. And again, we are going to be wrapping back to that. Anyway, though, moving on to the rest of Skull Shores, Gil does argue with Laguna for some of the movie, but that's mostly because Laguna is like curious and like exploring and like trying to figure out what's going on with the situation that they're in, because she does not trust the people that they are around. And Gil's just like kind of a coward, if we're being honest, at least within the context of this movie in this moment. He's just afraid. So I did want to say, yes, they are arguing for a lot of the movie, but I would say that the majority of their arguments are about him being anxious about their situation and like not wanting to get caught sneaking on board a ship or whatever, and less about anything that has to do with Laguna specifically. And then at the end of the movie, I definitely think that Gil redeems himself because he does go to the Great Scarier Reef to her parents by himself because he wants to save Laguna and their friends. And so in the end, his fear over like how they might receive him or his internalized racism that he may or may not hold is not as strong as his desire to help Laguna and their friends. And so he goes and he gets their help and he's able to kind of save the day. And I just think it's important to note that like again, while Gil might not be a perfect person, the side of him that is stronger is the side that believes Laguna is a good person and she's worth being around and she's worth, in this case, saving. So, next movie, Friday Night Frights. This one is kind of hard just because I did like a whole review on this. I did a whole review on all the movies. And within Friday Night Frights, there's a big theme of misogyny. And I think that several of the characters get mischaracterized. Most notably, Claude Wolf, I think, had a lot of damage to his character because in other movies, I think that he is a wonderful boyfriend to Draculaura. But in this one, he just openly believed that girls were not as capable as boys, or like Heath, literally every single movie went from being like, yeah, girls suck to, oh, okay, maybe girls aren't that bad, and then would reset every single movie. It was super, super irritating. So I cannot recall directly whether Gil participated in the misogyny within Friday Night Frights. The wiki, I didn't see anything specific about it, but not that it's like, I'm not trying to excuse his behavior for the sake of my argument. I'm just genuinely saying I think that every male in that movie was a little bit skewed towards misogyny so that the movie could happen. So was he not great? That's definitely a possibility. But I don't think that that's a problem specific to Gil or his relationship with Laguna. So again, I kind of have to mention it. You can take it for what you will. Like maybe you believe that all of them are like showing their true colors in that movie, and you can absolutely believe that. Like that's a valid interpretation, but I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts. Then the last movie we have to talk about is 13 Wishes. So within this movie, Gigi the genie does turn Laguna from a seawater monster into a freshwater monster. I think it is extremely important to note that Gil does not say, hey, I wish Laguna was a freshwater monster. Laguna doesn't even say, I wish I was a freshwater monster. She just says that she wishes Gil's parents would like her. And Gigi's interpretation of this, like the way that she makes that happen, is to turn Laguna into a freshwater monster. So it is imperative that I say Gil did not say, hey, yo, I want my girlfriend to be a freshwater monster because that'd be way easier. Gigi did that all on her own, and it was absolute nonsense. And moreover, Gil doesn't like freshwater Laguna. Like, he is still around her. Like, he still is like, oh, this is Laguna. Like, this is my girlfriend. But he actively dislikes her behavior as a freshwater monster and is glad when, at the end of the movie, she goes back to her old self and is a seawater monster and all of that. Like, he didn't want her to be a freshwater monster. He doesn't like it when she is. And he is happy when she goes back to being who her authentic self is. So, like, 13 Wishes, I think that was a horrible thing to do to Laguna, to turn her into a freshwater monster. Like, that is just not chill. But for the purposes of this video, I think it's very important to highlight that Gil didn't like that decision and liked Laguna better as she actually is. Oh, I said that was the last video, but I technically need to vaguely mention Great Scary Reef. Not really a lot happens within that movie, like with their relationship specifically. Weirdly, they do act as though Gil is kind of meeting her family for the first time, which we know is untrue because he met them in Skull Shores, but he gets along with her family and he is supportive of Laguna the whole movie. So like, there's not really much else that I feel like I need to say. So that's all of my evidence. Now we get to my conclusion. I feel like looking at the evidence, I have been able to prove, hopefully successfully, like I feel like it's pretty concrete, that Gil is not racist in the same way his parents are. As I alluded to earlier, probably there is like a chance, almost certainly, that he does have some internalized stereotypes or some internalized racism towards sea monsters because he grew up in that environment. And again, I think it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to grow up being raised in a racist environment and not hold onto some of those beliefs, even if you aren't doing so consciously, just like deep, deep, deep down. So like, yes, Gil probably does have, on some level, some sort of internalized racism, but overtly, he is not like, I hate all sea monsters. He's not like, I only like Laguna. He doesn't seem to be fetishizing sea monsters or anything like that. You know, I don't think that he is, I don't know like what the opposite of a microaggression would be, like a macroaggression. He doesn't really exhibit to me any macroaggressions. However, I want to say very, very clearly here, especially within the context of like real life racism, just because someone is not like showing overt signs of racism doesn't mean that they aren't participating in microaggressions. And that is absolutely not to say that microaggressions cannot be just as harmful. Like, I obviously am white. Like, I don't have any experience receiving racism, right? Like, I have never been on that end of the stick. So I don't want to say what's worse, what's better, anything like that, because it's not on me to quantify. And any racism is bad, right? So I really want to highlight that just because he's not overtly racist doesn't mean that the potential microaggressions that he may or may not have are not also bad. Okay. Like, I'm willing to admit that. I'm like trying to be open and like have this conversation as respectfully as possible, because while we are talking about cartoon characters, racism is a real life thing that is unfortunately alive and well. And so, because this is something that real people could be experiencing, I want to try to be as respectful as possible, especially coming from a place of someone who has never been on the receiving end of racism. So, what I want to get into with this, I think, and like the biggest thing for me that makes Gil's actions seem more sympathetic, I just got, what was that? I think I've somehow gotten lipstick on my white table. Sorry, I got distracted. I think it's extremely necessary to highlight within this debate that Gil is a teenager. He is going to Monster High because he's a high schooler, because he's a teenager. And that does not absolve him of all of his actions. Teenagers can do terrible things. But I do think it's important to note, because it does add a layer to the conversation. Just the fact that Gil might not have had time to really work on himself. Like, he's clearly doing better than some teenagers would be in his scenario. Like, he did stand up to his parents. He does argue on Laguna's behalf. He does support her. Like, when push comes to shove, he does choose Laguna, and he does choose to be there and be supportive of her in her entirety and exactly as who she is. But like, within the context of he might have, some little bigoted thoughts, I don't want to say I'm giving an excuse, because like, a racist teenager is still a racist teenager who could be hurting other people. But I do think, I guess it's important to say, like, he might not have had time to really work on himself fully in terms of unlearning those thoughts, or like unlearning any of the internalized racism that he may or may not hold. But the bigger reason that I'm highlighting his age, because again, like I said, like, a racist teenager can still do harm. Just because they're a teenager doesn't absolve them of the responsibility of their beliefs or their actions in that regard. But as a teenager, I'm assuming that Gil is supported by his parents, right? Like, I'm assuming that he does not have a job on top of going to high school, or at least like a full-time job that could pay for him to live on his own and eat on his own and all of that. We see in the webisodes his parents like talking to him in his room. So presumably they are housing him, they are paying for what he needs to be alive. And that is a different situation to be in than if Gil was 30 and we were having this conversation. If Gil and Laguna were 30 years old and he could not stand up to his parents and say, hey, if you keep being racist to my girlfriend, like, we're not talking, because I love her and she means so much to me and she's a good person, and y'all are just racist. Like, if he couldn't say that as a 30-year-old, I would be judging him significantly more harshly, because I do think as an adult, it's different. Like, you're on your own. I'm assuming, like, in this scenario I'm making up in my head, he would be on his own. He'd be able to afford to live on his own. He would have like emotional ties to his parents, but they wouldn't have power over him, I guess is the best way to put it. And that would be a different conversation. Like, if he and Laguna were 30 years old and he was letting his parents be racist towards her and not fighting his utmost against it, or giving them the ultimatum of, hey, like, I love this girl, I want to be with this girl, if you cannot stop being racist about this, or if you can't like work on unlearning your behavior, I can't talk to you, and like, I'm certainly not going to let you talk to her and talk down to her. That's a problem. But he's in high school now. Even within high school, can you make the argument that he should still be doing that? Absolutely. Again, I'm white. Like, I have never been on the receiving end of racism, so like, I don't feel like it's my place to say, no, he shouldn't have to do that, because he should still be standing up for his girlfriend. But I do think that it just gets a little bit more complicated, because if he is relying on his parents to be alive, the repercussions that they might introduce for him standing up to them could be severe. And again, this is where I would highly encourage my mom, if she's watching, to look away. Thank you for wanting to support me, but like, maybe this isn't the video for you. Because I'm going to get a little personal, a little candid here. I've mentioned on the channel before that I'm bisexual. I'm not really shy about that. But I was shy about it in high school. And actually, at the time, I thought I was a lesbian. And I was terrified to come out. Like, beyond terrified. I would constantly get into arguments with my family about like their homophobia and the fact that I think that people of any gender and any sexuality deserve to have the same rights as everyone else. Side note, I'm bringing up the gender and sexuality just because that's my experience, because again, I haven't lived like in the receiving end of racism, so I can't speak on that, but I can speak on the receiving end of homophobia. So I'm just trying to like kind of correlate the two. Not that like I'm not trying to correlate severity in every situation because every situation is different. I'm just giving my side of like the bigotry that I have experienced, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I used to get in fights with my parents constantly when I was in high school because they did not believe that gay people should have the right to get married or honestly to just exist, you know? Like they didn't believe that. Like they were homophobic. And I would fight them, but I would never come out to them because I was fucking scared. And I genuinely didn't know if they knew about my sexuality, if I would end up being a teenager who got kicked out on the streets. Like I just didn't know, because that's the kind of thing that you can't always know until it happens. And I wasn't willing to take the risk that they would be so homophobic that they would kick me out. I was scared. I was terrified. I dated a girl very briefly in high school and they never knew about it. They still actually don't know about it to this day because that's how terrified I was. Like they thought she was just my friend because I thought I might be homeless if I was honest with them about my relationship. And so, as I kind of mentioned earlier, if we kind of take that and put it to like an interracial relationship, right? If we say that in that scenario, say my parents were extremely racist, which like they were kind of racist. They weren't extremely racist, but they were kind of racist. Let's say I was afraid to tell them that I had a black girlfriend or a black boyfriend or whatever the case might be. Absolutely. My girlfriend or boyfriend in that hypothetical scenario would be the bigger victim. Like I'm not trying to say that, oh, like woe is me, like I have a hard time, I'm scared to tell them about you, because like that can be true, but also the person who's actually experiencing that racism is by far the bigger victim, which is why I said earlier that Laguna is not the enemy in all of this. I'm not trying to defend Gil at her expense. Laguna was 100% right in her feelings regarding Gil and his parents. But what I am trying to say is that it's possible. We don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe Gil and his parents weren't like that serious. I don't know. But it is possible that in his head, Gil thought, hey, if I stand up too much, I might lose this or this or this. Maybe he didn't even think he was going to be homeless. I'm really oversharing this video. Wow. But it's getting real personal. At the same time, like in my middle high school years, the punishment that I would get if I didn't like go to church or do my homework or whatever like I needed to do, whatever my parents deemed that I needed to do, was I would lose like my phone or my internet or whatever it might be. And at the time, being online in specifically fandom spaces and also being able to text my friends on my phone were the only two things that were keeping me like above water in terms of having a will to live. Does that sound a little silly? Maybe if you've never experienced those deep dark kind of thoughts, yeah. But like sometimes being able to log on to fanfiction.net and read a silly, goofy fanfiction would cheer me up just enough to get through the night. So I know that sounds dramatic, but like here we are. So at any given point in time, if I misbehaved, I could have gotten punished. And like maybe I needed to, like maybe I really truly was doing something wrong. But because I was in such a bad mental state, that punishment, like I was afraid to do anything wrong because I was afraid to receive a punishment because I knew just how tenuous my mental health was at that point in time. And the punishment that I would get could have taken away my lifelines. I hope that makes sense. So even if Gil's parents weren't racist to the extent where it's like, hey, if you date Laguna, we're going to kick you out and become homeless, even if it's not like that sort of situation, the lore doesn't delve deep enough to know just how bad it was for Gil, right? And once again, Laguna is 10,000% the bigger victim here. But in a world where you are young, you still haven't figured yourself out yet, you have parents that you rely on completely, coming to them and standing up to them for some people can be dangerous, can be scary in like a very serious way. Some people, it's fine. Like, I had friends who would argue with their parents and, like, it was no big deal. Like, they could say anything to their parents and they wouldn't even get in trouble. But not everyone lives that reality. And I'm not trying to sit here and make excuses for Gil because he maybe didn't live that reality, right? Again, the lore does not go deep enough to tell us that, to tell us what the consequences of him dating Laguna could have been. But we also don't know that they weren't that bad. And also, we don't know, like, what Gil thought versus what the reality was, because eventually I did come out to my parents and they didn't kick me out. They weren't happy, but they didn't kick me out. But until that moment, I didn't know that for certain. And so it was a huge gamble to tell them, because in my head, I was like, yeah, they could just be unhappy or they could kick me out. And I won't know until I do it. And so for Gil, it's possible, again, not necessarily true, but it's possible that he could be in that same situation. And so maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but I think for a young kid in his situation, Gil didn't do that bad. Again, he was absolutely not perfect. He should have communicated better with Laguna at certain points. And from an outside perspective, I think it's very easy to say, yeah, he should have stood up for her from the beginning. But I guess what I'm here to say is that I think the situation is not always that black and white or that simple. There can be intricacies and uncertainties and fear that, like, you don't necessarily see and, like, know about, but, like, it can be more than just, hey, you should do this. And again, at the end of the day, consistently, it wasn't like it was just one webisode where Gil was actually nice to Laguna. Like, consistently, at the end of the day, when he really had to make a decision, he chose her every single time. And I do think that that counts for something, that when it came down to brass tacks, Laguna was what Gil always prioritized. So, like, once again, as I said before, I'm not saying Gil was perfect. I'm not at all saying that Laguna was wrong to be upset with him at certain points. But I do think that the fandom has, like, characterized him as this horrible racist boyfriend in some scenarios. And I just simply don't think that it's true. I don't think that it's that cut and dry. And I don't think that it is anywhere near that severe. Once again, this is coming from the perspective of a white person. So, like, what does my opinion really count for, if we're being honest? Like, I'm saying all this, but I absolutely could be wrong. You know, I want to remain open to that possibility. And again, I think I just maybe sympathize with Gil a little bit too much on a personal level because, you know, as I've mentioned in this video, I grew up with parents who were racist and homophobic and deeply, deeply religious, and I learned a lot of bad behaviors from them. And as an adult, I'm glad to say that I have unlearned a lot of those behaviors. I'm still unlearning those behaviors just because I think there's always something new to be learned, especially as someone who, like, looks like me and who is white, and so therefore exists in the part of society that is, like, systemically through the years been put above other parts of society. I feel like it is my responsibility to keep learning about race and about how, like, that has affected the systems in America and how other people have been affected by it. And, like, that's something that I want to keep doing for as long as I'm able to, right? So maybe I'm just sympathizing with Gil because I can, like, connect with him more, and, like, I have had those sorts of experiences, I guess, versus I haven't had Laguna's experiences. So maybe I am completely wrong. I don't know. I guess let me know in the comments. But for me, just looking through the wiki again and, like, watching the movies to begin with, I knew about the, like, Gil and Laguna thing and how people did not like them as a couple. And I completely can understand if that's your opinion. And, like, if you hold that opinion, I don't judge you. Like, I'm not like, oh, people who hate Gil are stupid or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. I guess I'm just trying to say that as someone who has a perspective that could line up a little bit closer, or no, maybe not perspective, that's kind of a bad word, who has had life experiences that could line up a little bit more closely with Gil, I do feel some sort of sympathy there. Once again, can't highlight enough, way more sympathy for Laguna. But, like, I can understand where he's coming from, and I can understand how difficult that situation is to navigate. And so I just wanted to stand up for him a little bit and say that, like, he's not perfect, but I don't think that he's evil, and I don't think that he was the worst boyfriend ever. And I really do think that he cared about Laguna to the best of his capability. So this has been a really long video, I think. I'm not really sure how long I've been filming, but it feels like I've been here for a while. And also a very deeply personal video, which I did not plan for going in, but here we are. I'm a little uncomfortable now, but, like, it is what it is. Definitely let me know your thoughts on this subject in the comments down below. Please do try to keep it respectful for everybody. I love to hear different opinions on everything, but especially something like this, I think that it is really interesting to get outside perspectives, like perspectives that aren't my own, just because I can only experience the world as me, and sometimes I want to hear about thoughts that don't come from inside my brain. But I just wanted to put this out there and kind of be like, hey, yeah, this is how I interpreted the situation. So let me know what you think of my interpretation. I hope this was fun for you guys. A little bit more serious, a little bit more like, I was going to say scholarly, but I'm giving myself way too much credit if I say that. But yeah, just kind of a different type of video. So as I said before, if there's any other subjects like this that you want me to tackle, feel free to let me know down in the comments. But I hope you were able to get something out of this video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or night, whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.